"Guys, you gotta come see this." Cruz had just popped his head into the cabin where Tiago and I were playing cards. He had a wild look in his eye that Cruz only got when he laid down a winning hand or his horse won big at the track. As we were currently floating in the middle of the ocean on a crab boat, I knew what he wanted to show us had nothing to do with racehorses. We were at the tail end of peak harvest season. Our last haul had been less than we would have hoped. The three of us debated whether we should head back out for one last stab at a payday or stay in port. Tiago and I voted to stay. Cruz was the lone holdout. Cruz needed money, but Cruz always needed money, and that wasn't enough to risk the trip. The weather system had reported a late-season hurricane coming right near our port of departure. While Tiago and I saw that as an obvious ill omen, Cruz said it could be our salvation. His thinking was, if we could skirt the hurricane, we'd be one of the few boats in the crab-rich waters. No competition. Couple that with it being late in the season, and we could fill our hull with all the crabs our boat could carry. That was a bit more persuasive. Never taking yes for an answer, Cruz went on to tell us that he had a dream that our next trip out would be extraordinary. Claimed it was as vivid as the real thing. I could smell the sea, taste it. I saw my mom on the shore, waving to me. It's like she was there. He never said why the trip would be extraordinary beyond his dream, but Cruz was a pit bull. Once he latched on to the leg of an idea, he wasn't dislodged easily. After confirming the storm's track and discussing the logistics of another run, we all agreed to risk it. That said, if things went south, whether due to weather, empty nets, or an act of God, we would return to port. We loaded the sea monk and shoved off. Things instantly went awry. The monk was ancient and had become persnickety in her old age. Our onboard electronics operated like a mobster at a construction site, there but often not working. Little quality of life. Things around the ship always needed fixing, pulling our attention away from more pressing matters. We had a wench go out and had to repair it on the fly. A real death by 1,000 paper cuts situation. Worse, a day out, we learned the storm's track had changed. Instead of teasing the shoreline before blowing back out into the Atlantic, the storm, Hurricane Maria, shifted and came straight into the Gulf. We'd managed to stay a safe distance away, but that didn't stop the water from roiling. Maria had us crashing and bashing all over the decks. "I'm not worried," Cruz said while rolling a cigarette. "My mom's name is Maria. It's a good omen." "Maria is my mom's middle name," I said. He laughed. "See? Double good omen. We're going to pull out more crabs than a Vegas brothel." He may have been on to something. While Marie's storm bands made the first day of the journey difficult, once we got past them, the waters calmed. We arrived at our destination unharmed, and our nets came out of the water full. It was the best haul we'd had to date. Maybe Cruz's dream had been prophetic after all? What's out there? Tiago, our captain, asked, laying down a card. Another mermaid sighting? I asked, countering Tiago's move. I know what I saw, but no. This is weirder. I mean, I've seen some shit on the water, but this takes the cake, he said. That was enough to pique our curiosity. Cruz had been a sailor longer than all of us. The man had, indeed, seen some shit. Tiago, and I put down our hands and headed topside. A strong breeze had started blowing, and as soon as we set foot on the deck, the temperature dropped a good 10 degrees. I raised my collar around my neck to fight off the cold. I spied something out in the distance. It looked like another ship at first, but something about it seemed wrong, Cruz said, taking us to the railing and pointing toward the horizon. See it? From where we were, what looked like a shadow was slowly moving along the horizon. It did look like a boat with the naked eye. Did you try hailing it on the radio? I asked. He shook his head. Wouldn't matter because that ain't a boat, he said, handing me a spyglass. I held it up, found the blurry object, and adjusted the focus until something truly unbelievable came into view. Is that a house? Tiago took the telescope from me and let out a low-pitched whistle. Well, that is something you don't see every day. Sure enough, out in the middle of the ocean was a gray and white two-story bungalow floating along the surface. The roof had been partially ripped off, and there were a lot of shingles missing, but it was otherwise intact. Even the large porch was still attached. It was like God had placed this home out here himself. What the fuck? I asked, dumbfounded. Hurricane debris? Maybe it went out with the surge? Cruz said, homes near the shore get swept out to sea all the time, but they don't stay intact. This one's just floating upright, like it's supposed to be there, Tiago said. Could you imagine how much it'd cost to rent on Airbnb with a 360-degree oceanfront view? Cruz joked that we all chuckled. Overhead, there was a crack of lightning and the distant roll of thunder. I looked over at Tiago, who shrugged. Could be a residual system still lingering. I can't imagine that thing survives another storm, I said. Should we go check it out? Cruz asked. We should call it in and let the proper authorities know about it, Tiago said. Don't see what us going over to it would accomplish. Where's your sense of adventure? It's not like we could board it, I said. Can't be stable enough to walk on. God no, Tiago said. We'd set foot on it, and the whole thing would capsize. It'd be like when an iceberg rolls over. Worse, the monk would be right next to it, and who knows how this old broad would respond to the water getting jostled like that. Please, Cruz said, slapping the pilot room wall. A THUNK echoed across the water. This baby is damn near indestructible. A giant squid could attack it, and this fucker would hold together enough to bring us into port and be ready to go a week later. Would that be the same giant squid you swore you saw last year? Tiago said, bigger even. I took the telescope back. There were still planters outside the front windows. As I was trying to figure out the flowers, which looked like ranunculus, I saw a figure move in the window. Oh shit, I said, lowering the scope. There's somebody in there. What? Let me see, Tiago said, grabbing the glass back. Where did you see it? Front window. I saw someone walk past. I'm gonna grab my binocs, Cruz said as he disappeared below deck. The odds of a house being out here in that condition, no less, are already astronomical, Tiago said, shaking his head. A person inside the house? We'd be more likely to survive being swallowed by a whale. Holy shit, there is someone in there. I slapped his shoulder in excitement. I fucking told you, man. He saw it too? Cruz said, rejoining us. He raised his binoculars. Where did you see them, Tiago? Second window in the front. Near the ranunculus, he said. Confirming my flower knowledge, Cruz moved his gaze to the window in question. While fiddling with the focus, he started screaming. Oh shit. They're waving at us. Look. Tiago raised the telescope again. I'll be damned. Another crack of thunder made us instinctually hunch. I craned my head and saw storm clouds approaching both the house and our boat. Off in the distance, I could see intense sheets of rain already falling. If that comes through, I said, not needing to say the part we all knew. We gotta go save them. Cruz said, maybe we should call in the Coast Guard? Tiago asked. They'd never get here in time, I said. Tiago stood there, weighing his options. He was the captain. Ultimately, it was his call. Cruz and I had been with him on countless runs, so we trusted him with our lives. Whatever he decided, we'd follow. Let me call in the Coast Guard, he said. Get their 2 cents on the matter. He moved toward the pilot room when the hair on his head started to rise. In fact, all of our hair did. Shit. We all dove into pilot room as a bolt of lightning came crashing down on the monk. The sound was like a shot from a howitzer, and the boat rocked from the blast. There was an electronic squelch from our instrument panel, followed by a troubling puff of black smoke. All the lights in the cabin went out. After we ensured Zeus was done, we pulled ourselves off the floor and assessed the damage. When you're part of a 3-person crew, you all get extra responsibilities beyond just crabbing. Cruz dropped down to check on the engine, while Tiago and I needed to check the radio and navigation equipment. If our electronics were fried, the housefolk wouldn't be the only people stuck out here. "Fuck," Tiago said as he fiddled with the radio. Radio is Stoy. Fuck. Tooling around with the navigational aids, I got them up and running. The sense of relief I felt in that moment was indescribable. I turned to Tiago with a huge grin on my face. If Cruz comes back and says we're good, we can at least find our way back home. Asterisk, thank the Lord for small miracles, Tiago said. Doing the sign of the cross for good measure. Asterisk, thank him for good engines too, Cruz said, rejoining us. Radio? Out, I said. Shit, he said. We have to go get those people now, Tiago. Asterisk, I don't want to cause a mutiny or anything, but I agree. With the radio out, the only people on the planet who know they're out, there are the guys in this room. Asterisk, Tiago sighed and nodded. I don't love it, but I can't disagree. I'll bring us over to it. Get on your jackets and get the preservers ready to throw. Aye, Cruz said, disappearing to gear up. As soon as he disappeared, Tiago looked at me. You can't bring up mutiny, even as a joke. Asterisk, forgive me, I said. I'm just rattled. Asterisk, still, it could be dangerous, he said, moving his eyes where Cruz had been. Between you and me, I think he's in a lot of trouble back in port money issues, among other things. When you're compromised, you take unnecessary risks. He could start spiraling and screw us all. We're 3 days out from shore. Anything can happen. Asterisk, sorry, I said. For real. I was just injecting levity in a heavy situation. Asterisk, I get it, but use your head, huh? When there's doubt, there's no doubt. Get me? Asterisk, I nodded and headed out of the pilot's room to ready up. Tiago fired up the engines and pointed us toward the floating house. Above us, an angry sky pulsated with lightning and rumbled with thunder. We headed into uncertain waters. Asterisk, I went to the railing and watched as the house came closer into view. Cruz came over and handed me my life vest. I thanked him and put it on. He stood next to me, his eyes fixated on the house. Asterisk, think there's any chance this is a mass delusion? He asked. Asterisk. Anything's possible, I said, motioning to the floating house. I mean, no more proof than what lies ahead. Asterisk, you think there are any valuables in there? I gave him a look, and he smiled. I mean, this is technically a salvage mission, no? Asterisk, we're not going inside the house, I said, holding up the life preserver. We toss these and haul them in, same as any crab catch. Asterisk, the silence returned as Tiago cut a path through the choppy waves. The closer we got, the more hurricane damage we saw. The bottom of the house bore the scars of being ripped away from the foundation. Broken boards snapped at craggy angles. The front windows were cracked, and what remained looked like a row of jagged teeth. The front door was closed, but had taken a beating during the storm. Asterisk, Tiago slowed the engines while we were about 20 yards out. A strong breeze had picked up again, and the monk rolled with the rippling waves. The curtains of rain inched closer. In about 15 minutes or so, we'd be smack dab in the middle of this mess. The monk would be in danger of slamming into that house, potentially damning all of us. Asterisk, the monk stopped. Tiago joined us at the railing. How in the world is this thing still floating? Asterisk, maybe something buoyant got trapped under it, I said. Or maybe it's a real, live miracle? Asterisk. It's luck, Cruz said. Just dumb luck. If we were in a casino, this asshole would have won big at the machine next to you. Trust me. Asterisk. Tiago cupped his hands around his mouth and hollered, "Hello." Asterisk. We all waited for a response, but nobody did. There was a distant flash of lightning and a loud rumble of thunder that vibrated the monk. The curtains of rain were slowly marching toward us. Asterisk. Cruz looked at Tiago. "We're not close enough. They can't hear." Asterisk. "They gotta be watching for us," he said. "Hello, anyone there?" No response. The monk bobbed in the water. The only sound we heard was waves splashing against the ship. Tiago sighed. "I'll bring us a bit closer. Keep an eye out for people, huh?" Asterisk. Tiago left, and Cruz and I scanned the house for anyone. I nodded at the place. "Think we might have actually had that mass delusion?" Asterisk. "There are people in there. Maybe they're in danger." Asterisk. They're obviously in danger," I said, motioning to the floating house. Asterisk. "No, like, they got hurt and can't make it to the window. Each time a big wave breaks near this thing, it has to rattle it to hell. How the floor hasn't collapsed is a testament to fine craftsmanship. And, God, there's probably stuff flying all over with each wave breaking against it. Something could have fallen and knocked them out, or cut them, or God knows what." Asterisk. "You want to go inside, don't you?" Asterisk. "I don't want to," he said. "But we might need to. Imagine if this were your family, man. You're already panicked about the hurricane making a direct hit. Then you find out the house is missing. Then you later find out that the house miraculously survived, but the only boat in 100 nautical miles didn't check to see if your family members were alive. That shit would haunt me my whole life, the not knowing." It was hard to disagree with his point. Staring out at the floating house, I started laughing. What the hell was I even looking at? Rationally, you know that impossible shit happens every day. Things that define logic and cause people to have an existential crisis. But you never imagine anything like that will happen to you. The thought of seeing the scenes of reality pull apart feels impossible to experience. But then you find yourself staring at a floating 2-story house in the middle of the ocean from the deck of a crab ship. And suddenly, those scenes come into focus. Asterisk. It made me think of the stories old sailors tell about all the unbelievable things they've seen out in the open water. You don't believe them because modern science said they're just tall tales. Of course, there isn't a giant shipwrecking squid out there. We'd know about it now. Then the corpse of one washes up on a beach, and your whole world is rocked. Asterisk. Looking out at the floating house. I felt a kinship with those old salts, who swore they saw mermaids, or heard the sweet call of sirens beckoning them. I couldn't even hazard a guess as to what this was. It was all too fantastical to even comprehend. I was absent-mindedly pinching the skin near my elbow to make sure this wasn't some fever dream. Each squeeze of my fingers confirmed I was alive. This was real. Asterisk. Tiago guided the boat toward the house at a pace that made the turtle look like the hare. I appreciated his caution. Accidentally ramming this thing with the boat would be catastrophic, but the pull of doing the right thing was strong. I found myself tightening my grip on the railing, my knuckles turning white. Asterisk. "Hello." Cruz yelled. "Anyone in there?" Asterisk. Silence, save for the water splashing against the boat and the groaning of the house timbers as it swayed in the current. We all huddled near the railing and called out in a different tongue. Cruz tried in Spanish. I tried in my broken French. Tiago tried in his rusty Portuguese. Nobody responded, not at first. I was about to comment on our run of bad luck when the front door to the house swung open. At first, we all thought it had become dislodged from the waves, but then we saw the shape of a person standing just inside the foyer. Asterisk. Hey, we're here to save you," Cruz yelled. Can you walk out onto the porch? Asterisk. No, a faint woman's voice called out. I can't. Asterisk. Cruz turned to me. Wonder if it's too unstable. If she fell through, she'd be trapped under there in the cold water. She'd never make it. Asterisk. Is there anyone else in there with you? Tiago yelled. Asterisk. Why, yes. I can't move them. They're hurt. Asterisk. Okay, hold on, Cruz yelled. We'll get something over there. Tiago turned to Cruz. I can't bring the monk any closer. We have the raft, Cruz said. That's our only raft. How are we going to haul it out of the water when you're done rescuing those people? Where are we going to store it on board once it's inflated? We cut it loose and head for land. Those people are going to need medical attention we can't provide, Cruz said. Unless one of you is a doctor and hasn't mentioned it before. If we leave it behind, we're putting ourselves at risk, especially with these storms brewing. As if he queued it up, another flash of lightning quickly, followed by the deep bass rumble of growing thunder shook. You see, we can't leave these people out. Here, this puts all of our lives at risk, theirs and ours. Everything's a risk, Cruz said, his voice louder than intended. We're holding the dice in our hands. We gotta play this out. We can't back away from the table. Not now. I looked at Tiago and shook my head. There are no easy answers here. Tiago turned away from us, angrily ran his hands through his hair, and muttered a string of swear words in Portuguese. He came stomping back to us and took in a deep breath. We shouldn't have come out here. I didn't want to, and the voice in my head was screaming to stay in port. Mine too, I said, looking over at Cruz. But we all agreed on this course of action. I think we all need to agree again. This could put all of us at risk. I vote we go, Cruz said. Cut the trip short. We've had a decent haul so far, more than enough to pay for fuel and supplies. Plus, the news stories about this will absolutely get us more attention from customers. Could be a boon for the business. I appreciated Cruz's dual-pronged attack, business and personal. Solid move. I was already leaning towards the rescue, but it helped push me over the edge. I nodded. I agree. I won't be able to sleep knowing we didn't try to help. This is a haunt you until you die kind of decision we're talking about. I can't have that on my conscience. I looked Tiago in the eyes and shook my head. I'm sorry, but... No, he said, clapping his hand on my shoulder. I can't let this slide either. But we have to hurry, understand? This storm is worsening. We're going to be screwed like a jar lid if it hits us. We got this, Cappy, Cruz said. In and out, like special forces. Tiago nodded. Get the raft. We can tether a rope between the raft and the monk in case the storm gets worse. Get them on board and get back as fast as you can. Do not go into the house. Who knows how unstable it is? We have maybe 10 minutes or so before the rain catches up and the water is already getting worse. Move. We snapped into action. Cruz broke out the raft and had it in the water while I gathered a few supplies, including my well-worn Leatherman that we'd need in the boat. We launched the raft and Tiago threw us the rope. I tied it tight to the gunwale with an expert knot, and we began our trek toward the housetop. As we approached, you could see how the storm had battered the place. The paint had been stripped, the windows were cracked and broken, and chunks of the wall had been knocked out and were crumbling. The whole home looked so misshapen, I had a hard time believing it could have survived the washout to sea in one piece. Hello, Cruz yelled. Can you hear me? We waited on pins and needles for a response, but none came. Where the hell is she? Maybe she's washing her hair, I deadpanned. I wanted to loosen up the tension we were feeling. It didn't work. Ma'am, can you come to the door again? Nothing from inside the house. I swallowed hard. We were within striking distance of the porch steps. Water lapped up onto the wood, forming puddles on the stairs. The wood looked puffy from the swelling, and not at all stable. The thought of setting foot on them filled me with anxiety. Another Dracula, film-worthy flash of lightning, and a burst of thunder shook our raft. The approaching storm was damn near on top of us. The lady inside was going to have to move quickly, or there was a good chance the whole house would sink below the waves. I nudged Cruz. "What the fuck is going on?" "Something's not right," he said. "We might have to board it." I knew this was coming. We both did. But speaking it out into the wider world made it real. My whole body shivered. I even felt my soul shimmy. I glanced at the porch. If I leaned out, I could grab the railing and pull us over to disembark Dot from the upstairs window. We heard a woman scream in horror. Cruz looked at me, and I grabbed that railing, pulling us up to the porch. Cruz hurtled over the side of the raft and crashed onto the slick wood. His landing shook the entire porch, and a few boards loosened and fell away, but he stayed dry. "Go," I said. "Be careful." Cruz found his footing, held onto the wall, and opened the front door. With the house cresting over more agitated waves, he disappeared into the darkness. I swallowed hard again. My nerves were shot, and I heard a rattling noise coming from inside our raft. Dot. It was my hand shaking against the side. Glanced back at the monk and saw Tiago standing near the railing. He'd tied his end of the rope to the monk's gunwale, making sure we had a literal lifeline between us. He kept looking up at the sky, keeping track of the storm's movement. The curtain of rain inching closer. The sound of the downpour hitting the ocean getting louder with each minute. Cruz walked past the window with the flowers. His head was on a swivel, his balance unsteady. He did a quick look around the bottom floor, but didn't see anyone down there. He popped his head back out the front door. "There isn't anyone on this floor. I'm about to head up. When you get there, come to the window so I can see you're good." "Sure," he said, ducking back into the floating house. I looked back at Tiago and shrugged. He looked nervous. Even from where I was standing, you could read the concern enveloping his body. He was absent-mindedly tapping the gunwale, transforming his nervous thumping into a beat, like some kind of tweaked-out wizard trying to recreate a Kraftwerk song from memory. The rain was starting to drizzle around the house. The waves beat against us with a little more anger. The increased rolling made me clutch the railing hard to keep steady. Each swell caused the house to shriek and moan. Pieces of lumber from the porch began to pull apart and drift into the open sea. I doubted the porch would be around by the time the brunt of the storm hit us. I put my hands around my mouth and yelled, "Cruz, what's the holdup?" He didn't respond. My guts tightened. I knew he had a hard time hearing me from out here, but I couldn't shake the feeling he was in danger. Those old sea stories were rattling around in my mind, literally, as the raft rocked with each wave. The sense of impending doom loomed over me like these growing storm clouds. Damocles by way of cumulonimbus. Cruz, what's going on? The upstairs window yanked open. Cruz, wild-eyed and grinning, looked like an excited kid on Christmas morning. "You've got to come up here." "What? Why?" "Just come up. Trust me." "Where's the woman?" He slammed the window shut. My open jaw let the salty spray from the sea spatter across my tongue. What the hell was Cruz doing? I turned back to Tiago, who was calling out something, but his voice was lost to the wind. He started pointing toward the house. I followed the direction of his finger and saw, to my horror, the whisper of a waterspout beginning to form in the distance. Fuck. Cruz. Cruz. Waterspout. But his form didn't return to the window. I cursed to myself and shook my head. I was gonna have to go into the house. Reaching out, I clutched the porch railing and pulled the raft up to the edge of the port. The rain had moved from drizzle to droplets as I heaved myself over the side of the raft. The wood was slippery, and I nearly fell ass over tea kettle into the open ocean. Pausing to ensure my feet were back under me, I grabbed the raft and beached it as far as I could onto the wood. I needed to secure the raft to the house. If the stormwater carried it away, Cruz and I would be trapped. We'd be dead. Spying a small length of rope in the raft, I hastily tied a knot from the raft's railing to the porch post. It wasn't my most elegant knot, but it would have to do. I needed to be quick. Water spouts can fizzle out, but they also can grow and wreck shit. I didn't know which way this one was leaning, but considering our run of luck, I had to assume it would be the latter. I made my way to the front door and ripped it open. I stepped inside and instantly noticed the rolling of the waves had ceased. I was standing on solid ground. No visible damage from the storm. I could smell someone roasting chili rellenos on an oven burner in the kitchen. My stomach rumbled, and the aroma brought me back to childhood. My mom in the kitchen, humming big band standards, lost in her own world. I heard the humming now. That's when I noticed that the house was flooded with sunlight. That couldn't be possible. There was a goddamn waterspout heading toward us. The thunder and lightning were so severe that I was worried we'd be zapped trying to flee. Mi pecuega corrida. Puedes venir a ayudarme? It was my mom's voice. Why was I hearing my mom's voice in this house? Are you hungry? I'm making extra, she said in her broken English. Come in here and make a plate, chico corrido. Absolutely not. I don't care how wonderful the food smelled. I heard thumping upstairs. Cruz. I backed away from the living room and dashed up the stairs. The second floor seemed completely different from the bottom, like someone had squished two different Lego sets together to create something new. Cruz? In here, I heard him call from one of the rooms at the end of the hall. I opened the door and found him, rifling through dresser drawers. On the bed was a small fortune in found cash and jewelry. He ripped open another drawer and just started cackling. He reached in and pulled out handfuls of $100 bills. Cruz, what the fuck are you doing? Every drawer is stuffed with valuables. All of them. A freaking bonanza. Who knew this floating house would be a treasure trove? This is gonna solve all my problems, man. Someone heard my prayers. Where's the woman? What? Where's the woman, Cruz? I don't know. I heard her up here, but when I got here, she was gone. But then I found all this. Cruz, we've got to find this woman and get out of there. There's a water spout out there. We're out of time. I gotta hold on, he said, grabbing a pillow and stripping off the case. He slid all of his ill-gotten gains inside and slung them over his shoulder like a cat burglar ready to run from the cops. Okay, we good? Was there a woman cooking downstairs when you walked in? What are you talking about? I heard my mom cooking in the kitchen. I put my hands around my mouth and yelled, Cruz, what's the holdup? He didn't respond. My guts tightened. I knew he had a hard time hearing me from out here, but I couldn't shake the feeling he was in danger. Those old sea stories were rattling around in my mind, literally, as the raft rocked with each wave. The sense of impending doom loomed over me like these growing storm clouds. Gamacles by way of cumulonimbus. Cruz. What's going on? The upstairs window yanked open. Cruz, wild-eyed and grinning, looked like an excited kid on Christmas morning. You've got to come up here. What? Why? Just come up. Trust me. Where's the woman? He slammed the window shut. My open jaw let the salty spray from the sea spatter across my tongue. What the hell was Cruz doing? I turned back to Tiago, who who was calling out something, but his voice was lost to the wind. He started pointing toward the house. I followed the direction of his finger and saw, to my horror, the whisper of a waterspout beginning to form in the distance. Fuck. Cruz! Cruz! Waterspout! But his form didn't return to the window. I cursed to myself and shook my head. I was going to have to go into the house. Reaching out, I clutched the porch railing and pulled the raft up to the edge of the port. The rain had moved from drizzle to droplets as I heaved myself over the side of the raft. The wood was slippery, and I nearly fell ass over tea-kettle into the open ocean. Pausing to ensure my feet were back under me, I grabbed the raft and beached it as far as I could onto the wood. I needed to secure the raft to the house. If the storm water carried it away, Cruz and I would be trapped. We'd be dead. Spying a small length of rope in the raft, I hastily tied a knot from the raft's railing to the porch post. It wasn't my most elegant knot, but it would have to do. I needed to be quick. Waterspouts can fizzle out, but they also can grow and wreck shit. I didn't know which way this one was leaning, but considering our run of luck, I had to assume it would be the latter. I made my way to the front door and ripped it open. I stepped inside and instantly noticed the rolling of the waves had ceased. I was standing on solid ground. No visible damage from the storm. I could smell someone roasting chili rellenos on an oven burner in the kitchen. My stomach rumbled, and the aroma brought me back to childhood. My mom in the kitchen, humming big band standards, lost in her own world. I heard the humming now. That's when I noticed that the house was flooded with sunlight. That couldn't be possible. There was a goddamn waterspout heading toward us. The thunder and lightning were so severe that I was worried we'd be zapped trying to flee. Mi pacuega corrida, puedes venir a ayudarme. It was my mom's voice. Why was I hearing my mom's voice in this house? Are you hungry? I'm making extra, she said in her broken English. Come in here and make a plate, Chico Corrido. Absolutely not. I don't care how wonderful the food smelled. I heard thumping upstairs. Cruz. I backed away from the living room and dashed up the stairs. The second floor seemed completely different from the bottom, like someone had squished two different Lego sets together to create something new. Cruz? In here, I heard him call from one of the rooms at the end of the hall. I opened the door and found him, rifling through dresser drawers. On the bed was a small fortune in found cash and jewelry. He ripped open another drawer and just started cackling. He reached in and pulled out handfuls of $100 bills. Cruz, what the fuck are you doing? Every drawer is stuffed with valuables. All of them. A freaking bonanza. Who knew this floating house would be a treasure trove? This is gonna solve all my problems, man. Someone heard my prayers. Where's the woman? What? Where's the woman, Cruz? I don't know. I heard her up here, but when I got here, she was gone. But then I found all this. Cruz, we've got to find this woman and get out of there. There's a water spout out there. We're out of time. I gotta hold on, he said, grabbing a pillow and stripping off the case. He slid all of his ill-gotten gains inside and slung them over his shoulder, like a cat burglar ready to run from the cops. Okay, we good? Was there a woman cooking downstairs when you walked in? What are you talking about? I heard my mom cooking in the kitchen. He froze. Did you see her? No. She asked me to come help her, but I wasn't going in there. Why? I heard my mom. Upstairs. It's why I came up here. She was crying. About my dad. Did you see her? Yes, he said. I smelled the perfume she used to wear. I hated it. It's burned into my brain. She walked into this room, and I followed her. She's not here, though. No, but she must have been because when I walked in, that top drawer was open. I saw the gold, and well, I kinda lost all my senses, he said, the realization of everything hitting him at once. What the fuck was my mom doing here? From behind us, we heard a long, drawn-out squeak from someone trying to walk up the stairs slowly so as not to be noticed. At first, my mind went to Tiago, but that wouldn't make any sense. Who would be on the monk if he were here? How would he even get here? Hello? Came the woman's voice from the stairs. Are you two here for me? I looked at Cruz and whispered, where has she been? Another footstep on the stairs. Slow. Methodical. Dread seeped into my body like salt water into lumber. I knew in my soul she wasn't coming up to talk. She was stalking us. I shared my thoughts with Cruz, who dismissed them. No way, he said, though I saw the doubt creep into his features. That wouldn't make sense. None of this makes sense, I said, struggling to keep my voice low. What are you saying? I paused. I had a lot to say, but the words were trapped in my mind's parking lot, honking and struggling to find their way out. A louder step on the stairs helped get the thoughts moving in the right direction. I think the house is haunted. The house that got swept out to sea just happened to be haunted? What are the odds of that? I don't think this house got swept out to sea at all. I think this is a haunted spot in the ocean, and whatever the fuck lives here is manifesting a house, I said. And I think that lady isn't really a lady. Cruz was about to respond, but two loud thuds from the hallway silenced us. The lady had reached the top of the stairs. Are you two going to help me? Or am I going to have to tell your mothers that you're being bad boys? On the word boys, the timid female voice deepened and was filled with menace. Cruz, who had been doubting me, suddenly met me at my premise. What the fuck are we gonna do? We gotta get out of here. Now. How? She's blocking the stairs. I looked back at the window in the room. From here, it still looked sunny outside. With more force than was necessary, I yanked hard and pulled the window open. The top half of the glass was still glowing with the images of a sunny day outside. The bottom half of the window exposed the truth. The storm had arrived. A hard, steady rain fell, and the waves were beating against the house, splintering the base. Cruz looked dumbfounded. What the fuck is this place? You're not thinking of leaving without helping me, are you? The woman said, her timid voice returning. I'll die out here all alone. A new noise emerged from the hallway, the sound of suction cups sticking and unsticking on the walls. I'd rather both of you die with me, she said, her voice giving way to a horrible cackle. We gotta jump to the porch, I said. Scramble onto the raft, get the fuck back to the monk, and forget this place exists. Where are you boys hiding now? The woman asked. We heard the wet slap of a heavy arm land on the door across from us. Are you in this room? We listened to the sound of metal hinges snapping and the splintering of wood as she ripped the door across from us off the wall. Fuck this, Cruz said, pushing me aside and punching out the screen. He leaned out of the top of the window, his body lashed with rain, and dropped the pillowcase down onto the creaking porch. It landed with a thud. I'll see you down there, he said as he gauged his leap. Mumbled a prayer to God and jumped. I pushed my head out the window and saw his body collapse onto the porch below. His impact jarred a couple of boards loose, and they disappeared into the raging waters. Cruz collected himself, grabbed his bag of loot, and waved at me to jump. That means you boys must be hiding in this room, the woman said, cackling. I heard the wet slap of that heavy arm hit the door. Seconds later, the woman wrenched it away as easily as someone cracking open a peanut, caught sight of a pair of jet-black tentacles landing hard on the ground, followed by the sound of a heavy body being dragged behind them. She'd be in the room in seconds, and I had no desire to see her face. Seeing the arms was enough motivation to jump from the window. The fall was sudden and endless at the same time. The world moved in slow motion as my body crashed down. The falling rain stung my eyes, but I could still see the swirling of the waterspout as it churned toward us. The lightning and thunder were so loud that it felt like they were in my brain. But something more threatening than this storm boomed over everything: the lady's cackle. I landed on my chest on the porch and lost my breath. As I hit, the section of the porch broke away, and my legs plunged into the icy water below. I scrambled to grab the railing and pull myself back up, but my hand couldn't grip the rain-slicked wood. I slipped into the water that the shock of the cold sapped all my energy. My body had used all its internal resources trying to keep me warm, but it was a fool's gambit. If I didn't get out, I'd be dead in minutes. Thankfully, I'd been wise enough to keep my vest on. My head was under for only a second, because the life jacket kept me from disappearing below the inky black water. Cruz rushed over, grabbed the railing with one hand, and extended the other to me. With all my remaining energy, I clutched his hand and held firm. I kicked and he yanked, and eventually I breached the water and slid onto the porch. We didn't have time to celebrate. The window above us shattered, bringing bits of broken glass down with the raindrops. The woman's cackling laughter boomed louder than the storm. I stood on uneasy legs. The water was rocking the house like an earthquake, and I nodded at the raft. "We gotta go," I yelled, rushing onto the raft. My legs caught the railing, and I tumbled in, smashing my face on the bottom. I could taste the coppery blood in my mouth, but I pushed through. I stood and yelled for Cruz to come on. Above us, the woman beat her tentacles against the walls of the house. Each blow made the whole thing shake. Pieces dislodged and fell into the water. When you coupled that with the rolling waves and pounding rain, it was only a matter of time before the house collapsed. Cruz hefted his bag of goodies up and threw it in the boat with me. As it flew through the air, the pillowcase transformed before our eyes into an anchor with razor-sharp edges. There was no gold, no cash, just revenge for the hubris Cruz had shown Dot. As the anchor slammed into the raft, it tore a hole in the bottom as easily as a hot knife through butter. A spout of water shot up, soaking me with salty spray. Seconds later, I could feel the water around my ankles. The raft was sinking. Panic struck my heart, but my brain kicked into gear. I patted my pockets and felt the Leatherman I kept on me. I yanked it out and started sawing away at the rope that connected the two vessels. Cruz and I could use it to get back to the monk. It wasn't an ideal plan, but ideal plans were a luxury. Now it was time for survival. I yelled at Cruz to get moving. He was still dazed from his wealth, his problem-solving wealth, dropping to the ocean floor. I screamed at him again, my hands quickly sawing away at the rope as I did. The 6th or 7th time I said it, he snapped back to reality and leapt for the boat. He never made it. As I successfully sawed through the last fiber. I turned back to see a dark black tentacle shoot down from the upstairs window and wrap around Cruz's foot. He screamed and punched away at the thick, pulsating arm, but he failed to shake it loose. The tentacle gripped harder, the suction cups holding firm and oozing out a rancid black bile that ate away at his clothes and made his skin burn and bubble. We locked eyes. Fear, regret, and anger shone through his baby blues. I wanted to help, but before I could act, another tentacle shot out and wrapped around his face. His screams were muffled, but the hurt bled through. With a tug, his body took flight toward the open window, toward the cackling sea beast waiting just beyond my view. The water was to my knees. In a few seconds, it'd overtake the side and go under, taking me with it. I wrapped the rope around my arm and jumped into the water. I swam as fast as I could away from the sinking raft. Halfway to the sea monk, I heard a tremendous crash behind me, and a massive wave overtook me. The house had collapsed. I breached the surface and kept kicking. My body burned and ached. My vision was blurry. I felt a deep hurt in my soul, but I kept moving. I could hear Tiago screaming. I was close to the side of the boat. I might just get out of this alive. I glanced back and watched as the waterspout hit the remains of the house, sending bits of it flinging through the air. Dozens of tiny splashes erupted around me. Small bits of the haunted house pinged off the side of the monk, creating a discordant funeral dirge as I finally, mercifully, reached the boat. Tiago and I worked in concert to pull me out of the water. Our reunion was brief. We had to go, or we'd likely be joining Cruz. As soon as I was on deck, Tiago sprinted for the pilot's room, his feet sliding on the wet floors, and fired the engines back up. The sea monk roared to life, and we tore ass away from the storm, and the creature as fast as the old girl could go. Though the waves rocked us, and the sailing was anything but smooth, Tiago guided us away from hell. 30 minutes later, we had put enough distance between us for Tiago to slow and check on me. I was a mess. Blood-stained teeth from the cuts in my mouth, vomit down the front of my soaked clothes, my body violently shaking from the cold. It didn't matter. Tiago and I hugged and held one another, tears streaming down our faces. We'd survived. What the fuck was that? Tiago finally asked. I dunno, I said. Whatever it was, we should have left it alone. I'm sorry we didn't listen to you, Captain. Tiago shook his head. We're not blaming anyone for anything. We made the right call to try to help someone. I'd do that 10 times out of 10, he said. What happened was something we would have never seen coming. It was an act of God. That wasn't an act of God, I said. That was the act of something God fears. Tiago didn't argue. We're heading back to port now. Neither of us knew Cruz's family or how to reach them. We're debating going to the police, but we're not sure what that would do, other than make us suspects in a murder. We've discussed reporting things to the Coast Guard or government, but we haven't made any decisions yet. I'm sitting in my bunk, trying to figure out why things happened the way they did. Why Cruz and not me? I've got it narrowed down to 2 thoughts. The first was when my mom called for me to join her in the kitchen, but I didn't go. I never saw her face. Cruz went to his mom. He saw her face. It marked him. The second, Cruz tried to steal something from the creature. He gave in to his baser instincts. It cost him. The man was always a gambler, and this time he should have folded his hand. I didn't blame him for trying to cheat the system. Who amongst us wouldn't take the shortcut? But you never know who's watching. What's the expression again? The house always wins.